This is going to be a bit of a different episode. Firstly, I need to apologise, taking the piss with getting these out to you. So I started this podcast with the best intentions of doing one episode a week, and with work and life and motherhood and just general stuff getting in the way, I let it slide, and that's on me. Become a little bit more of a burden to get the episodes recorded and then edited, and I'm doing it all on my own, and I really, really want to make a go of this, so I do apologise. You're just going to have to bear with me. The podcast is still alive. I've got a few episodes that have been recorded. I just need to edit them and get them out. So, but this is my most recent one because I'm going to do this one a little bit differently today and kind of reframe my thinking and make it perfectly clear to anyone that's watching where I sort of stand on this. So, whilst this episode is not directly related to parenting as such, it is related to being a parent, if that makes sense. As you are probably all very aware, that there has been a lot of shit going on recently in the news, which mostly sort of stemmed from September the 10th and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I need to make it perfectly clear where I stand on this because I was a huge fan of Charlie Kirk's. Did I agree with everything all the time that he said? No. Did I agree with 99% of everything that he said? Yes. Does that make me far right? No. Have I been called a Nazi and a far right Nazi? Yes. So that's kind of where we are. I wanted to make this episode to address some of the things that I've seen on social media in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the reason that I'm doing this is from a parenting point of view. So I know that a lot of other podcasters have done similar episodes where they've said they've made it more of a political thing. And whilst the backbone of that is obviously political, it was a political assassination, and there have been issues politically on both the right and the left, or the Liberals and Conservatives, Liberals and Republicans. I'm in the UK. And I'm just looking at everything unravelling. And from a parent's point of view, it's frightening the shit out of me. I already had concerns about how life was going to be when I gave birth to Jacob in a pandemic. We went into lockdown in the UK on March the 27th, I think. And I was 9 months pregnant at the time. Jacob was born on the 10th of April. I was being induced, so I was taken into hospital on the 3rd of April. So literally right at the start of COVID and the lockdowns, I was in hospital. It was a very, very surreal experience, being alone. My husband, Andrew, has another child from previous relationship, and his birth story and birth journey is completely different to what we had with Jacob. He was allowed to stay in the hospital, he was allowed to be there, he was allowed to be in the room while she was labouring, all of this. Their parents were allowed to come up and be in the room, and they do all of the birth, the birthday kind of balloons and stuff after the kid was born. We had none of that. So I was taken into hospital on the 3rd of April to be induced. That took a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I very naively thought that being induced meant it was going to be quicker. In actual fact, it's a lot longer generally. I should have just waited for him to come out naturally, but I was classified as a high-risk pregnancy, so they wanted to induce me and they kind of pushed for it. And at the time we went in, I think they started me on a pessary first, so I had an internal pessary. I might as well have shoved a sweetie up there because it did nothing. But you have to wait, I think, 24 hours for that first pessary to kick in. So we had to wait 24 hours before they could try another one. Again, Smarties did nothing. So the 2 pessaries I had did nothing. And then I think the next stage was they wanted to manually break my waters, which was single-handedly the most excruciating thing in the entire labour experience. I know some people say that they literally just go like that and it's done. For me, it was horrendous. It was so painful. It was horrific. And like I said, I was on my own, so I had no sort of support and backup there, and I was absolutely terrified. But so they broke my waters, and he still wasn't allowed to come up, and So I think it was like the 5th or 6th by the time we got to the stage of breaking my waters. And once they broke my waters, I was then classified as being in active labour, even though I was only, I think, 2 centimetres at the time. But because my waters had broken, obviously it becomes a little bit more pressing of a matter. Andy was allowed to come up to the hospital at that stage and be with me. And so obviously he got rushed up. My mum drove him up and he came up straight away. By the grace of God, he was allowed to stay with me then and be with me through my labour experience. And then there were complications. Long story short, Jacob ended up being born emergency C-section for failure to progress. So then obviously I had to stay in hospital for, I think, 24, maybe 36 hours, I think, before we were allowed to go home after the C-section. And then we came home. So that's kind of my birth story. So with all of that going on, and I could hear while I was in hospital, I can hear I was isolated because I accidentally coughed in the hospital. And they came in, they were like, oh, immediately sort of swabbing my cheeks and my nose and everything to make sure that I hadn't got COVID. But because I'd coughed and they had to wait for sort of the go ahead, I got put into an isolation room, which was nice because then I ended up having my own birthing suite rather than being on a ward. So it ended up not being too bad. I didn't have COVID, but I was in the hospital and I could hear all the clapping going on outside. We had all of when I was trying to get myself into labour before they broke my waters manually and did the pethidine, pethidine injection. When they put me on a drip as well to try and bring on my contractions, that was fun. But while they're doing all this, I've seen videos and, you get told to walk to try and bring on labour. All I could do was walk around my room because I wasn't allowed outside onto the hall because you're not allowed to go and speak to other people. You had to stay within your distance. You weren't bubbled with anyone at that time. So it was a very lonely and isolating experience, to say the least, aside from when Andy came up. My mum wasn't allowed to come up. It was only one person that was allowed to be with you. And I kind of had an inkling then that, once the COVID thing had not died down, and we spent basically my entire 9 months of maternity leave in, the COVID world, in isolation. It was basically just me and Andy, and we weren't allowed to see anyone. No one was allowed to come and visit Jacob after he was born until they sort of released the bubbles, and you were allowed to go and bubble with people, but you still weren't allowed to touch people. You still weren't allowed to hold anyone. So no, we had none of this kind of first excitement of come and meet our newborn baby. None of that happened for us. As a bonus point to that, it was nice because we, as a couple, got to have this amazing bonding time with our son that I don't think anyone else has, because we were so separated from the rest of the world. So in a way, it was nice that we had that bonding time. But on the other side, it would have been nice to have that little bit of my uncle being able to come and see him and grandparents being able to come and meet them. And even my stepdaughter, who obviously does not live with us, she wasn't allowed to come initially because she got COVID. The family got COVID. So they weren't allowed to come and be near him. So she didn't end up meeting her little brother until it was a good few months after he was born when she actually first, or at least a good month or so, when his sister actually met him for the first time. Obviously, we did FaceTimes and stuff, but it's not the same as meeting your little brother, straight away when he's born. I digress anyway with the COVID thing, but that was just to kind of give a bit of an inkling as to kind of Jacob's life. It's kind of gone on this trajectory, and it started from the COVID thing. And then pushing forward from there, we've had all of the George Floyd stuff. We've had all of the riots and the world has just become so divided. And then more recently, we've gone into the trans issues. We've gone into, being split between, should men be in women's sports? No, they shouldn't. But apparently that makes you transphobic. It's just everyone, you're either on the right or you're on the left, and that's across the board. It seems that you cannot be down the middle anymore. You cannot seem to have a middle ground. It's like if you feel a certain way about one topic, you must feel that way about all the topics. When in actual fact, there's nuances. We don't always feel completely black and white about certain topics. And it's really frightening being a parent at the moment, because I can see this division in society. And someone said to me on TikTok the other day, and they said, "Oh, I think we're headed for a civil war." And I said, to be honest, I think we're already in a civil war. I just don't think we've admitted it to ourselves. And because it's not been on the news and someone's kind of officially kind of claimed we are in a civil war. I think we are in a civil war. I think we've been in a civil war since we came out of the COVID pandemic. There was this instance in COVID pandemic where we were all sort of singing and we were all clapping for each other. And then when we came out of the pandemic, it was like, oh, yes, we can touch each other. We can speak to each other. That's gone. That has gone now. You're either over here on the right, and apparently you can't just be on the right anymore. You are far right. You have to be far right. There's no right anymore. Or you're on the left, but again, you can't just be on the left. You have to be a liberal. And I really am starting to despair. And then last week, well, not last week, but on the 10th of September, Charlie Kirk was assassinated for his political beliefs. Now, I do not give a shit about whether you liked Charlie Kirk as a person. That is your decision to make. But again, what I have seen on TikTok and social media has been nothing short of abhorrent and vile, disgusting behaviour, and people cheering the fact that a man has been shot in the neck on TV, where I myself saw the video. I saw the close-up video. Did I want to see that close-up video? No. Was I looking for that close-up video? No. I saw that video whilst I was scrolling TikTok trying to find out what had happened, and it just popped up on my For You page. I saw the clip before I had time to swipe off and realise what was actually going on. And that is the world that we're now living on. We've got so used to being on social media. Everyone is filming everything all the time that it is getting impossible to censor things. And our brains are just not wired to see that information. I was having this conversation with Andy after this happened, and I said that it's worrying because to a certain extent, I've seen images. I love horror films. Me and Andy are massive horror films buff. The gorier, the better for us. But it's a film, it's make-believe. And whilst elements of those films do happen in real life, I'm aware that people get stabbed and shot and killed all the time. There are wars. I'm fully aware of that. But unless you actively go looking for that, where you can kind of put your brain in that mindset of, I want to see this video, I want to see that graphic nature video, you can kind of prepare your brain for that onslaught of visual graphicness. But when you're just casually scrolling on TikTok and you get presented to you without you looking at it, it's a real shock to the nervous system to actually see that kind of graphicness. And it put me in a really weird headspace. And I'm still in that headspace because I don't really know how I felt about seeing it. And I don't really know how to process that information that I saw. And I think, like a lot of the world, I had this very strange, I suppose, feeling after Charlie Kirk was shot. I didn't know Charlie Kirk on any level, apart from what I'd seen on YouTube and TikTok clips. Like I say, I was a follower of Turning Point. I think what they do is fantastic. I was a follower of Charlie Kirk, but that's it. I'm not in any way, shape or form linked to him. I've never met him. I'm English, he's American. But I felt like I'd witnessed the murder of someone that I was related to. And I still don't know why I feel like that or why I felt like that. And as ridiculous as it sounds, or not ridiculous as it sounds, I don't know. I've always been an atheist. Atheist? Maybe agnostic. I would like to think that there's something out there. I would like to think that there's an alternate for us. Am I religious? No. Am I a Christian? No, never have been. Did I pick up a Bible and read a Bible after Charlie Kirk was shot for some reason? Yes. Do I still have that Bible? Yes. Do I still read it? Yes. I don't know why. It's a very surreal reality that we're living in at the moment, and it worries me. As I say, actually, worry would be a very mild way of putting it. It frightens the absolute shit out of me as a parent, looking at this world that we've created where you can't even have a civil discourse with people anymore. You can't talk to people anymore without having this vile kind of rhetoric or hatred between each other. And that goes for both sides. I think the left is slightly more explosive with their reactions. I've seen that myself on TikTok. But then again, I'm not naive to the fact that our algorithms on social media, on all platforms, we're all being manipulated to some description by whoever it is that's creating these platforms. TikTok is probably the worst. You know, we all laugh and joke about creating and curating our FYPs. You know, mine and my husband, we keep laughing at things because we send each other Instagram reels or TikToks. My husband does not do TikTok, I do, but he does scroll on TikTok. But you know, like many couples and friends and whatnot, we send each other silly videos frequently per day. And we've joked and laughed about it before because I've sent him a video and then he sent me the exact same video, and it's happened like multiple times during the day. And we're like, well, our algorithms are completely matched up. We're clearly watching the same things, you know. But I am fully aware that as a person on social media, my FYP that's being pushed out to me, or my videos that are being pushed out to me, are videos that are curated for me based on videos that I have liked in the past or topics that I like. So if you're more right-leaning in videos that you watch and like and comment on, they start pushing out more right-leaning content to you, so that you never really see the other side of it. And if you do see the other side of that content, it's generally the more negative side of the content. So for me, as I say, because I watched a lot of Turning Point USA, I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson, I watch a lot of Charlie Kirk, I watch a lot of, who else do I watch? Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens. I watch all of their stuff. So for me, my FYP is very, very right-leaning in terms of what I get pushed out to me. And I'm very aware of the fact that that is happening. So when stuff that's coming from the left gets pushed out to me, it's still not genuine kind of left-leaning content. It's right-leaning content that has been manipulated to be bad for the left. So I get the negative left content rather than any positive left. And it is exactly the same for the other side. So if you are liberal or you're left leaning in your FYP, that's what you get. So anytime you see right leaning content, it's all very right extremist content, MAGA content, far right extreme in Tommy Robinson content. It's all very opposing scales. There's no middle ground anymore. And I think we all need to take a step back from social media, to be honest. But I know that that is not going to happen. But I think the companies that are running these platforms, social media platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Meta, Facebook, you know, they need to take accountability in terms of, and we've just found out today that Google, of all places, was censoring content under the Biden administration, which is fucking huge. If you were a conservative or a Republican in America, your content would get censored on Google while Biden was in administration. That has huge ramifications. And then we wonder why people like Charlie Kirk are getting shot. It's because the liberal and left-leaning side of the world are only ever seeing content from left liberals. They're only ever seeing content that's curated for them because the content that's from the right is being censored on Google. So the only news that they're getting is from the left-leaning mainstream media. It's all being curated. It's all being fed to our algorithms based on which political side of the party we sit on and what content we are watching on TikTok or Instagram. And that is frightening as to how manipulated we get, because we are being manipulated. And I've been sitting here as a parent trying to think about how I can prevent this from happening for Jacob. And we say we've got free speech. We don't have free speech. We certainly don't have free speech in the UK anymore, where we're getting arrested for social media posts and putting out our thoughts and opinions on social media, and then the police come knocking. That's not free speech. Katie Hopkins, whether you like her or not, that's not what this podcast episode is about, but she was arrested recently Not for a hate crime, not for being violent, a social media post. That's where we are in the UK. But we can't, in the UK or the US, honestly, hands down, say that any of us have free speech anymore. We like to think we've got free speech, but when you're being manipulated and guided by social media, that's not free speech, because it's taking out the human element of it, and it's just drip feeding us this curated content for us. And when you're only ever getting fed right-leaning content or left-leaning content and more extreme right-leaning content, more extreme left-leaning content, unless you can pull yourself out of that and start judging it and going, I can see now, I can see that this is what's happening. But obviously, I'm 37 years old. I'm not a impressionable university student. I'm not an impressionable 11-year-old on TikTok that started off doing makeup tutorials for a laugh or doing dance routines for a laugh with their friends and their family. But we're allowing children on these social media platforms, and it doesn't take long. I'm not here to mention that because it's not what it's about, but it's come out recently that the shooter, the assassinator for the young man that shot Charlie Kirk, had been indoctrinated by liberal ideologies. And a lot of people on social media have said, oh, he only did one semester at university. Seriously, sit on TikTok for a week, let alone a semester. Sit on TikTok for a week and see what your FYP starts pushing out to you, and see where your brain goes in terms of your thoughts. You will start going, yeah, I can see what they're on about now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see, I understand now. All it takes, to be honest, not even a week. Give it a couple of days and you'll start to change your opinion. Watch something on TikTok and try and not get pushed in or pulled in by an ideology. It's very, very difficult. And I've been sitting here trying to think how we can prevent this as a parent and how we can stop our children from doing this. Because even if I take Jacob off social media, I say take him off social media, he's not on social media, he's only 5. But when he gets to the stage where he's going to secondary school and he wants a phone, and social media is everywhere, and he wants to have social media, I can say, well, you're not having social media, but his friends might have social media. I can't prevent that from happening. If he goes for a sleepover at a friend's house and he's only got a brick phone, what we used to call brick phones that don't have internet access, for example. I don't think they even make those anymore. But if I give him a phone that's parent locked up to the hilt without social media, he could go to a friend's sleepover and they've got a gaming setup with YouTube on and Facebook and TikTok, and they sit up until the early hours of the morning watching Facebook and TikTok. I physically can't think of a way to prevent my son, or my stepdaughter for that matter, being exposed to social media. And I can see it in my stepdaughter already. She's being influenced without being on social media because of her friends. Her Christmas list last year was Stanley Cups and Laneige body sets. It wasn't what I used to order when I was, wanted from Santa when I was that age. I wanted Barbie dolls and Furbies and toys. But she's being influenced from friends that are on social media and being influenced by social media. But I think it's getting to the point where I was worried about my kids before, where I was just worried about the content that we're seeing. I was worried about, are they going to be influenced? Are they going to want the latest designer crap? Or they're just going to be influenced by trends? That was what I was worried about. That's the least of my concerns now. What I'm really desperately worried about now is that they're influenced by political beliefs or beliefs of other people and can't make up their own minds, because that doesn't happen anymore. We don't have the ability to make up our own minds anymore. And especially, which is why I think people are missing the point with Charlie Kirk and people like Charlie Kirk. When he went to campuses, this is what he did. He allowed people from opposing parties to come in and debate him about topics in a friendly manner, and now that has been taken away because someone's been radicalized by a party, essentially. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is. That's kind of where I've been with this whole thing. If anyone has got any tips or ideas, I would love to hear from you, because I am genuinely frightened, and I would like to think I'm strong enough as a parent to be able to guide my son in the right direction. But again, a lot of people would agree that my direction is not the right direction. And I think, I don't know whether we are beyond helping anymore. And I think until social media is taken out of the equation, I think social media has got its pluses. I mean, that's what I do for a job. You know, I love social media from a business perspective because it brings my income in. I love social media for this, being able to talk and get my feelings out and talk to other people. It's fantastic. It has its uses, it has its place. I think it's crossed a line now, and I don't know what the answer is to bring that line back. I don't even think it's possible anymore. I think technology has got to the point where it has actually overtaken us as a species. Yeah, I don't know. If you've got any thoughts, let me know. I would love to hear from you. I promise I'm going to be better with my episodes. I'm going to try and record some now and batch record them. So if you see me in the same outfit, it's because I've literally just sat here recording episode after episode so that I can be a bit more committed to doing the podcast, because I do want to keep it going, but I'm aware I haven't done it for a while. So apologies again. But yeah, please, like, subscribe, talk to me. Even if you don't agree with me, I'm sorry that this is a slightly political post. Like I say, I didn't mean it to be a political episode. The podcast is not a political podcast, but I think when your podcast is called Unfiltered Parenthood, it's got to be the good, the bad, and the negative as well. And it's got to be all elements of parenthood. And at the moment, like I say, I'm very concerned as a parent where my parenting is going in terms of how we can keep our children safe. And there's so many elements of that I think, yeah, I'm very concerned about the world we're bringing children into at the moment, and it's worrying. So until next time.